Hi everyone, today I'm going to show you how you can create and listen to old MIDI files on Linux with Fruity LSD. And this is with Microsoft's old Roland GM wavetable synthesis that they use in Windows, and it's still there in Windows, but in Linux, obviously it's not installed by default because it's a Windows thing. But you can get it working in Linux, at least with this. I haven't tried it with other programs, but FL Studio is a really good one to use. So the first thing we're going to want to do is go to this website, and I'll have it linked in the description. This has a bunch of old installers for FL Studio, and we want this one, 20.8.4, which is the last 32-bit FL Studio installer, which is important because we need the 32-bit version of FL Studio in order for this to work. I already have it downloaded, so I won't do it again, but I have it on my downloads folder right here. So the next thing that I'm going to do is set up a 32-bit wine prefix. Now, I recommend doing this. You don't have to do it. I would just keep this separate from other things unless you really need it to be with another program or something, like with a VST. But if you're just using this for making MIDI files, you shouldn't need any VST. So I would just make a wine prefix just for this. And we're going to do that with this command. Winearch equals win32, wine prefix equals home/dot, and then you can call it whatever. You don't need the dot if you don't want it. You can call this whatever you want. I just have it .wine32 because the regular one is called .wine, so this is .wine32 because it's 32-bit. But you can call it whatever you want. And then winecfg. Once you run that, it'll create the folder for you, and it'll create the configuration for you, and then there we go. So before we do anything with this wine prefix, I always like to make an alias just to make it a little bit easier, so you don't have to remember the whole env wine prefix equals, just so you don't have to remember to do all that. Let's make an alias to make that a little bit easier. So you can put this in your bash rc by typing nano home/.bashrc and then press enter and put it at the bottom here. Or on Fedora, or at least in Nabara for me, they have a directory called bashrc.d that it looks in recursively for files that have commands and things like that. So I'm going to put it in there. And you can see I already have some things in here for things that I have added to bashrc and I don't want it to be in the file. So I already have a file that's full of aliases. So let's make a new alias. So I'm going to call it wine prefix 32 because wine32 is already a command that exists, but you can call it whatever you want. And then you're going to want to put env wine prefix equals home/.wine32 or wherever you placed it. And then Control O, enter, Control X. And so like I said, you can do that exact same thing in your regular bashrc file, but I just like to have it separate so that I don't mess with this file. But you can do however you want. So in order for the changes to be made, we need to exit bash. And once we've reopened the terminal, you can see that we have that prefix. And let me run winecfg just to make sure that it's working. There we go. So now that we have that set up, that'll make this a lot easier and we won't have to remember that whole thing every time we want to do it, which we'll have to do it multiple times. So that'll just make it easier. So let's go into downloads, ls, and you can see the installer is right there. So let's type our alias and then wine, fl, and then tab to autocomplete. Now don't worry, you won't have to do something in the terminal every time you want to launch FL Studio. It'll put it in your app launcher or wherever. So let's just go through the installer like normal. There's nothing particular that you have to do here. Just go through all the things. So let's just wait for this install to finish. So then you'll want to also continue with the ASIO for all installer. This should pop up if you haven't installed it on the wine prefix before. And then just click through the rest of it. And now we're done. So for now, we're done with the terminal. Let's just open up FL Studio and make sure it's working. So it's going to want you to sign in. So I'll do that right now and register with my account. So once you're all registered, I would recommend just don't ask in the future and then cancel for the new version pop-up because you don't want that. And this is not my project, it's a demo, but anyway. So now that we're here in FL Studio, I'm going to try out Fruity LSD so that you can see that it doesn't work. So as you can see, when I tried to open up the plugin list, it's unhappy and now it's frozen. So this is why the terminal is useful. Wine prefix 32, wine server -k. There we go. Let's try that again. So when you're adding plugins, I guess don't use the more plugins view because it breaks. There we go. And I'm going to add a MIDI out on port 1, which matches up with here. And you can see it's coming through, but there's no sound. That's because we don't have the DLLs installed that are needed for this. So we're going to do that next. So let's close out of FL Studio. And back in the terminal, we're going to type wine prefix 32 and then wine tricks. So if you don't have Winetricks, then you can come right here to Wine HQ, and I'll also link this in the description. So this is going to download it into your downloads folder, or you can put it wherever you want, and then it'll make it executable. And then whenever you do this, you'll want to go into that directory wherever it is, and then you type /Winetricks, because that's a local file. Or you can place it in somewhere where your path is and look into how to do that. I'm not going to explain that in this video, but I have Winetricks from a repository that has a bunch of wine stuff in it, which is, I mentioned in a previous video, that has WineTKG and all that stuff for Fedora. Anyway, out of the scope of this video, just get Winetricks and then you're going to want to run it on that prefix. So hit OK, install a Windows DLL or component, and let's make this bigger. So there's tons of components here, and I'm going to be completely honest, I kind of just installed a few things that looked like they would work for this, and I didn't exactly keep track of what made it work. Pretty much everything that's related to sound through DirectX, like DS Wave, D Sound, like those are the kind of things you're going to want to install. DMusic, DMusic 32, DM Synth, Direct Music, DP Voice. I wouldn't install all of these because you might run into issues, but let's go ahead and install these ones. So you can see this one successfully registered. So just hit OK and then keep waiting. Once it's done, this window will pop back up. And you know, actually what's funny is I forgot like the main thing that you need. GMDLS. This is actually like the Roland synth that you need. General MIDI DLS collection. It doesn't just work with this, you need some of those other DLLs, but that's the main one that has all the sounds and everything. So now that's done, it should work. Let's give it a try. Let's do it again, add a MIDI out, and put Fruity LSD. Port 1. There we go. And there's all these instruments here. And I mean, mostly this is just for like old MIDI files. The sounds aren't actually all that great, but if you want to make like this sort of style, then there you go. So I'll show you an example from StaffCirc Volume 9, and you want to pick MIDI out with Fruity LSD, drag the pattern in there. It's working! And I can also use one of my own MIDI files that I made. So yeah, that's how you get this working in Linux. I know that this is a niche thing, but I hope it helped someone. If you want, I'm sure that there's a way to bridge this to something like Reaper. If you want to have like a MIDI out going into FL Studio, or if you want to do like a VSTI with a YA bridge or all that kind of stuff, be my guest, but I'm not gonna do that today. Hope this helps. If you're confused on any of the steps, leave a comment and I'll do my best to help you out. And alright, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.